Once upon a time, in a small, quiet town, lived an old man named Edward. He had a magnificent white beard, eyes that sparkled like the morning dew, and a heart full of stories from a life well lived. Edward lived alone in a cozy little cottage at the end of a cobblestone street. His days were simple: a morning walk, tending to his small garden, and reading by the fireplace in the evenings. But as the years passed, the simplest tasks began to feel like climbing mountains. His steps grew slower, his hands trembled more, and the vibrant world round him seemed to be fading. Just a little, each day, one crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves danced in the breeze. Edward was trying to rake the sea of leaves that had carpeted his front yard. It was a beautiful sight, but for him, it was a daunting chore. He'd rake a small pile, and a gust of wind would come along and scatter it all over again. He sighed, leaning on his rake, feeling a wave of weariness wash over him. Just then, a young woman named Lily was walking by on her way to the market. She noticed Edward's struggle, the slump in his shoulders, and the tired look in his eyes. Her heart went out to him. Without a second thought, Lily walked up to his gate. "Good morning, sir," she said with a warm smile. "It looks like you could use an extra pair of hands. May I help you?" Edward was taken aback. In a world that often seemed too busy to notice, a stranger was offering help. He hesitated for a moment, not wanting to be a bother, but Lily's genuine kindness was hard to refuse. "Well, that's very kind of you, young lady," he said, his voice a little hoarse. "I'd be most grateful." Lily picked up a spare rake leaning against the fence, and together they began to work. They worked in a comfortable silence at first, the rhythmic swoosh of the rakes creating a peaceful melody. Then, slowly, they started to talk. Lily asked Edward about his garden, and his eyes lit up as he described his prize-winning roses. Edward asked Lily about her work as a local school teacher, and she spoke with passion about her students. In just a couple of hours, the yard was clear, and 2 large bags of leaves stood by the curb. But more importantly, a new friendship had begun to blossom. From that day on, Lily made it a point to visit Edward every few days. She'd help him with groceries, read the newspaper aloud when his eyes grew tired, or simply sit and listen to his fascinating stories of the past. She learned about his time as a shipbuilder, his travels to faraway lands, and the love of his life, his late wife, Eleanor. Edward, in turn, felt a light return to his life. The loneliness that had been a constant companion started to fade, replaced by the cheerful sound of Lily's laughter echoing through his quiet cottage. His home, once just a house, began to feel like a home again. Lily's visits were like rays of sunshine on a cloudy day. One afternoon, Lily arrived to find Edward looking a bit down. He explained that his old phonograph, his last connection to the music he and Eleanor had danced to, had broken. He had tried to fix it, but his shaky hands just couldn't manage the delicate parts. Lily, knowing how much this meant to him, had an idea. She called her brother. I was with electronics, and that weekend he came over. He spent the entire afternoon carefully working on the old machine. As the sun began to set, a soft, crackling melody filled the room. It was Edward and Eleanor's favorite song. Tears welled up in Edward's eyes as he listened. He looked at Lily and her brother, his heart overflowing with gratitude. It wasn't just about the music. It was about the kindness, the effort, the fact that these young people cared enough to bring a piece of his past back to life. That evening, Edward taught Lily the steps to a waltz, and they danced round the living room, laughing as they spun to the vintage tune. The small cottage was filled with more joy and life than it had seen in years. News of Lily's kindness spread through the small town, inspired by her example. Others started to look out for their elderly neighbors. Teenagers offered to mow lawns. Families brought over hot meals, and a small group even started a friendly visitors program, pairing volunteers with seniors who needed a bit of company or help. The town, which had always been pleasant, became a true community, woven together by threads of compassion and care. A single act of kindness had created a ripple effect, touching countless lives. Edward lived for several more happy years, his life enriched by the friendship of Lily and the warmth of his newly reconnected community. He was no longer just the old man at the end of the street. He was Edward, the storyteller, the gardener, the friend, and Lily, the kind helper, showed everyone that the greatest gifts we can give are our time and our compassion. Her simple act of stopping to help rake leaves didn't just clear a yard. It opened a door to friendship and reminded an entire town of the power of looking out for one another. This story of Edward and Lily serves as a beautiful reminder for all of us. Kindness doesn't require grand gestures or a lot of money. It can be as simple as a smile, an offer to help, or taking the time to listen. In our busy lives, it's easy to overlook the people around us, especially the elderly who may feel invisible or alone. But every person has a story, a history, a heart that longs for connection. Let's be the lily in someone's life. Let's be the ones who stop, who notice, and who offer a helping hand. You never know how much a small act of kindness can mean to someone, or how it might just change a life, and maybe even a whole community, for the better. Thanks for watching.